Today I'm interviewing Donald Barber. And Donald, will you just tell us a little bit of information about yourself,
Okay.
your name, your family background, where you grew up, where you went to school, that kind of thing?
Okay, I'll just give a brief overview, and if you need clarification or just kind of filling in, just stop me, and
Okay.
I'll fill in. Okay, my name's Donald Barber. I was born on March 24th, 1957. I've been a lifelong county resident. I had a brief interlude for like 3 years where I lived in Baltimore County, but for the rest of the time I was here. I mean, I never really kind of left here. I was always around someplace or another. I was born and raised at Sotterley in Hollywood. Um, my parents were both employees of Sotterley. My father worked out in the fields and in the garden, and then my mother worked in the what they call a big house, the mansion. She cleaned, and when the millionaires that owned the place were around, she would cook and kind of wait on them, was her job. So they both were kind of at the beck and call of the people that owned the place. So they didn't really have kind of a set work schedule. They just had to do whatever needed to be done. Generally, my father worked 6 days a week. He was only off on Sundays. And my mother worked just whenever she needed to work, which was basically every day. She also did some day work on the side where she would clean some white folks' houses. In addition to that. Let's see, I began school in 1963 at Banneker Elementary School in Loveville, and I was in the class of Miss Estelle Lee. I think a lot of people had her as everybody. All my brothers and sisters had her as a teacher, except for my little sister, because she was in school after schools were desegregated. And let's see, I went to Banneker for 2 years. Both of those years, I was in Miss Lee's class in the first grade and in the second grade. And then they did kind of like a semi-integration of schools when I was in the third grade, where they gave you a choice of whether you went to your regular segregated schools or if you wanted to go to your school that was close to your neighborhood. And at that time, my parents and my cousins, their parents, they all decided that we would go to the nearest school, which was in Hollywood. We went to Hollywood School, and then actually I'm a product of whatever St. Mary's County had to offer, because I went to Banneker, I went to Hollywood, I went to Leonardtown for middle school, and I went to Chopticon for high school, and then I went to St. Mary's College. So I had my complete education right here in the county, never left here. Let's see what else, anything else of significance. Right now I'm employed. I'm the senior director at a psychiatric rehabilitation program called Pathways that operates in Hollywood. So I'm still in Hollywood. I'm living there and working there. But that's pretty much my background.
Okay.
Oh, I can tell you. My father was Bernard Barber, and my mother, her maiden name was Somerville. She was in Somerville. And her family was, they were right there on St. John's Road. That's where her father was Blaine Somerville. And her mother's name was Susie. They're also Hollywood residents.
Okay. Do you feel that education prepared you for life? How well did it prepare you, and in what ways?
Okay. Actually, I think I got a very good preparation for life through my education, because I got to see, first of all, in addition to the reading, writing, arithmetic, what they call the 3 R's, I also had a great many experiences, what you would call kind of the social history kind of experiences, from number one, beginning in the segregated school system, where I found that even though the material resources were limited at Banneker when I was there. I mean, we didn't have textbooks. Our teacher wrote the work on the board, chalkboard, and then we had to copy things on paper, our assignments and things like that. We didn't have, I never had a textbook in the first grade when I was at Banneker. But what I did have was, there was an amazing amount of support from the teachers. One of the most vivid memories I have is my first day of school at Banneker. My sister, Phyllis, had graduated that in the spring before, and then I started in that fall. And it was just real striking to me that when I started, a bunch of the high school teachers came down to see me in the first grade class, and they all introduced themselves, and they talked about how good a student my sister was, and that basically if I pay attention and do what I'm supposed to do, I could do just as well. And it was a real family kind of feeling. I can't describe it any other way than that. You just felt like you belonged. And each of my older brothers and sisters had the teachers. They were all familiar with the family, and they knew that my parents were supporters of the children's education. So it was just it was a good feeling and a very good experience. Then they integrated schools. I think it was 1965 when I went to Hollywood School, and I had an experience that was the other end of the spectrum, where you weren't really welcome in the school. It was I think the teachers were on the leading edge of a kind of a social experiment, and they really didn't have proper preparation to handle the things that were going on. But one of the biggest kind of sharpest memories I have from that was, I think that they were told, I'm speculating here, that we weren't going to be as smart as the white children were. That I guess they knew we didn't have any books or any materials or anything, but what they didn't realize was that the social supports that we had made up for those material things that were missing, but I don't think they were anticipating that. So I think they had lower expectation for what our performance was going to be. But to back up a little bit, when I was in the second grade, I had a lot of older brothers and sisters. So in order to kind of survive in your household anyway, you have to learn things. So I could read, write, and add and subtract and multiply and tell time and all that kind of things that you're supposed to learn in school. You just, because of the large age gap between me and my older brothers and sisters, you just learn that stuff at home. Like, for example, if you want to watch something on TV and you don't know how to tell time, your sister's going to get it. So, you just learn that survival skills. So when I was at Banneker, Miss Lee noticed that I was ahead of where I was supposed to be for my class. So what she did was, I guess they must have had like a warehouse or something with textbooks, and she went and got some books from older classes and just tried to see if I could do the work in them, and I could do it pretty easily, actually, up until about the fourth grade. So she went and got a whole bunch of fourth grade books, and my math, my spelling and reading, all those kind of books. I had fourth grade books when I was in the second grade, and really there were no textbooks, but these were like samples or something they had at the board, and she gave those to me, and that's what I worked from. So by the time I got to Hollywood School, I mean, they were expecting me to lag behind, but work was a piece of cake. I mean, schoolwork always was kind of easy for me when I was, especially at that age, and that, that was no more of a challenge than what I had at Banneker. Matter of fact, it wasn't challenging because, like I said, I had fourth grade books when I was at Banneker, and then I went right back to the regular third grade books when I was at Hollywood School. And one of the things that's interesting, my mother never threw anything away. So when she had a stroke and we had to clean up her things, I found a whole bunch of my report cards. And one of the things I think is interesting, my mother was, I guess you would call that person functionally illiterate or something. I mean, she could read and write and everything, but she was kind of a product of the system that she grew up in. Her job was cleaning people's houses, so she could read well enough to distinguish like furniture polish from floor polish or something like that. But in terms of reading like a book or a magazine and kind of comprehending what you're reading, that was a very big struggle for her. And I noticed that on my the first report card that I had gotten from Hollywood School, the integrated school, I noticed that the teacher had put that I was working at grade level, and my mother had struggled to write something back, like basically, I know he's ahead of that, and then the teacher, of course, wrote back that no, he's right where he belongs. But it was just interesting to look back and see that kind of played out in writing there. Okay, well, I'm kind of rambling here.
How do you think now? You're talking a lot about what it was like then. Are things different today? Is there a difference in the way your family or society in general feels about education than when you were coming along? And if so, what is the difference?
Okay. First of all, I think there is a significant difference in the way my family felt about education and the way things are today. And it's probably kind of a reflection of society in general, because one of the things that kind of characteristics that I saw back at that time was it was a great deal of trust in the teachers. Um, like, okay, when I was in school, and particularly at Banneker, in very early elementary school, they would actually spank you if you were misbehaving. And, you know, my parents would tell me, you know, if you go to school and the teacher spanks you, you come home and spank you again. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like they were going to go to school and challenge the teacher. It's like, you know, what's going on. I think because it was more of a kind of a community feeling with the teachers, because the teachers were part of the community at that time, where I think nowadays more teachers are imported in or something. Because, you know, I can remember seeing some of the teachers in church on Sundays, those kind of things where, you know, if there's anything going on, they're going to kind of touch base after Mass. You know that there's some continuity between school and home. There wasn't like a disconnect where here you're at school and you do this, or here you're at home you do this. There was a continuity, I think. And I kind of feel that is not as prevalent today as it was back at that time. And I think it's to the detriment of the students and the learning environment in the school. Now, on the other hand, I think schools have a great deal more technology and just material resources today than they had in those times. And I think they have a better understanding of children that have any kind of a problem, be it a learning disability, be it some kind of behavioral problem, or be it just having like a dysfunctional home where you can't go home and sit down and do your homework and concentrate and get proper nutrition and things you need to be able to function at school. I think there's a better understanding of that now in the schools. So I mean, it's not all like in the good old days. It's, you know, it's like everything is a trade-off. You have some of something and less of something else.
How has your education or lack of education affected your relationships with your family members?
In particularly my family, there was a strong emphasis on education. So I think that the fact that I was pretty successful in school and I was able to go on to get, you know, my bachelor's degree in some college was expectation. So the fact that I kind of did what was expected of me, it just kind of eased things in the family. But when you say family, that's kind of a loose definition. You have an extended family in addition to your immediate family. And with the extended family, I think that it's been my perception that the people in my extended family are usually kind of proud of people that do well in school. I think one of the kind of cultural problems they have is people sometimes it's like downplay the importance of school and say like you're a nerd or a geek or something like a bookworm, I think was the old-fashioned term they used to use. Well, I've been very fortunate to have an extended family that values education, so those kind of distinctions weren't made at that time. So I think my education actually helped my my relationship with family. One other way it helped is that even though the older generation of my family seems to be dying out at this point, as I was growing up, they would always, if they had something that was puzzling to them, like some kind of form they had to fill out or something, I did a great deal of complete people's forms, like if they had to get Social Security benefits or their Medicaid benefits or Medicare benefits or anything like that. I spent a lot of time, and of course, I guess that kind of makes you have a tighter bond with your family because, you know, when you were small, the older members of your family did things to help you out, and then it's kind of a way of giving back, you know, as a reciprocity where they did something for you and you get in a position where you do something for them, you do that. So I never had any issue with helping people fill out forms. I was asked to do it 1,000 times, but I did it.
Thinking back as you were talking about your elementary years and on up through school, what would you used a word a little earlier called characteristics, and some of the things you said, you know, of families that trust teachers, more of a community feeling, people you saw, continuity between home and school. What, through the generations, do you think you all have passed on to the children in the family, the nieces, the nephews? What are some of the just basic kinds of things that your mother told you about school, that your sisters and brothers told their children? Do you have any information, or do you remember anything with that?
Okay, what we were taught was, I'll just be blunt here, is that yes, there's discrimination. There's a certain number of people that are going to discriminate against you because of your color. But you can choose to be ignorant. If the information is out there and there's a free public school that you can go to and attend, it's your responsibility to go and attend and soak up everything you can soak up there. And then if people discriminate against you, that's a fact that you can't do anything about. The things you can do something about, you do what you can about it, and you could possibly put yourself in a position where you don't have to deal with as many people that have these kind of discriminatory issues. In addition, just the kind of concept of just valuing education. While it's nice to be able to drive a Lexus or whatever, the fact that you may have to do a little less and invest some of your resources in your education carries more of a lasting value than that expensive car or expensive furniture or clothes. Those things are superficial, and the things you do to fortify your mind are the things that you can carry with you. And I think the biggest thing that my parents passed on to me, that we've passed on to it was just the value of reading. My parents didn't have good reading skills, and my parents were poor, economically, fiscally poor, and they considered themselves poor. And one of the things they always told us is that, well, we're poor because we weren't good in school. That was taught to us at an early age, and that, if you guys can do good in school, that you won't have to suffer the way we did. And then they made whatever sacrifices they had to do. I remember when I was very small, my mother bought this leather-bound set of World Book encyclopedias, and I mean, that was like a trip to the moon for a person with their economic situation, because they had to make payments on the things. I mean, they couldn't just buy them. They didn't have the money to even pay for 7 encyclopedias, but they were willing to make that sacrifice because they knew it was a bigger investment in the future, in our future, to do that. And I think that's been passed down through the generations. Just that whole concept of education as a value, and reading is the most important thing of all.
What about homework and those kinds of things?
Homework was inevitable. It was your first responsibility. We had chores and things to do, and as I got older, I had a job after school and everything, but your homework was just a given. It was just like the air you breathe. It was there, and you did it, and you took care of it, and there was no question and no argument about it. It was as much a part of education as going to school. You have homework to do, you do it. You take care of responsibilities.
Tell us a little about the intergenerational relationships in your family. Would you describe them as close, and how?
I think the intergenerational relationships in my family are particularly strong. It's an interesting thing to watch. I have no children of my own, but I have many nieces and nephews, and so our nieces and nephews even have children. And we operate as one family. I don't think some of the younger people in the family even understand what people's particular roles are in the family. I think they just think it was just one kind of a mass of family people, just relatives, is the way you see it. I think that it's interesting to see the differences. I mean, as each generation comes along, it seems that they have less things to struggle against. Well, I mean, I should take that. I should change it. A different kind of thing to struggle against. Whereas our struggle is primarily economic and just kind of obtaining and maintaining civil rights. Their struggle are against there's so many distractions and pitfalls in society. I actually think there's more pitfalls in society today than there were at the time we were coming along, because there's such a prevalent drug culture that has permeated music and print media, TV, movies, everything. And I don't think we had to withstand as much. I mean, drugs, and my mother used to say this too. They had drugs when I was young. We just had sense enough to leave them alone. That's what she said. And it's true. I mean, there have been drugs, as long as probably the man has been drugs and alcohol and things like that. And the ability to resist it I think, is a strength that carries people forward. But what I see now is just kind of this culture and some of the music and things where these drug references are just even casually made, like it's not even central to the topic or whatever the medium is conveying, but it's just kind of part of the environment. And for kids to negotiate that, the violence, I think there's a lot more potential for violence today than there was when we were coming along. So I think that the generation of kids that are coming up now need as much support as we could possibly give them, just to negotiate it successfully and be able to make it.
Just a question, again, thinking about what you said about family roles, and you were saying it's just kind of a big mass, and they know you're related, you know, and everybody's there, one big. Do you think that family roles, that there is a role for the uncle, for the aunt, for grandma, grandpa, for cousins, toward supporting one another, or has that just become one big, you know, family reunion without the separate responsibilities?
Without the identified kind of roles. Well, what's happened in my family is that my parents had children over such a broad period of time that there's overlap of generations. I think that's what's kind of led to people not really understanding, because like I have a younger sister, and then I have 3 nieces and nephews that are older than she is. So then there's some overlap there, because, you know, I think that some of the kids don't recognize that I'm their mother's brother. They probably kind of almost feel like I'm one of their brothers or something. It's just a kind of a strange, like I have a nephew, I'm 47, I have a nephew that's 45, that kind of thing. Whereas and because of the tight nature of the family, the feeling that you get is like a sibling, more of a sibling than of a person that's in a separate generation from that person. And because I mean, I noticed that my younger sister and my niece, that's exactly almost to the day 9 months older than her, are best friends. They function as sisters. It's just kind of a unique situation, I think, because my parents had children over a span of over 20 years. Our oldest brother was born in 1938, and my youngest sister was born in 1961. So that's a long time.
Is there anything that you would like to share about, you know, the differences in children today or people today and how they were, or just in general, your whole belief toward, I guess, improving the citizenry in our community and in the African-American culture?
Okay. Well, what I think could go a long way towards improving the citizenry of the current generation, I think, is more education and emphasis on the political system. I think people are a little quick to give up and say nothing I do will make a difference, when in fact there was a great deal of struggle. I mean, I think another value that we were taught was the value of voting. My parents had to struggle to vote, and they kind of see they kind of view the younger generation as kind of taking it for granted that you can vote, when it was something that they had many obstacles to go through in order to vote. So they made sure that as soon as we were of voting age, we registered. And I mean, my mother passed away in 1998. And right up until the time that she started having these severe strokes, she would always call me on any kind of election day and say, "Did you vote?" And, you know, I have voted in every election there's been since I've been of voting age. And I think that if we could somehow get that political kind of, it's a value. If you could get that political value passed on to the younger generation, I think that would be a big step. Just kind of becoming invested in the system and knowing that there's strength in numbers, and the fact that if they chose to do things with unity, that they could have a much louder voice and get some of the needs met in a way that works within the system and changes the system in a way that it supports them, instead of having to be on the outside of the system and kind of approaching with your hand out looking for something. Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Let's see. Oh, okay. One of the things that I'd like to share is that I was recruited for the Board of Trustees of Sotterley, and I currently serve as a member of the Executive Board. I'm the treasurer of the Sotterley Foundation. I grew up on Sotterley, and I started working there at the age of 7, picking weeds out of the gravel driveway and picking strawberries in the springtime. And then as through the years, we cut grass and just did kind of manual labor at Sotterley. And my father, he worked there as manual, as I said earlier. My mother did, and my grandparents, just generation of my family worked there. And I thought it was insightful on the part of the current Board of Trustees of Sotterley to recruit me as a member in an effort to diversify the trustees, and then the message that comes out from Sotterley. And I think there's a very powerful message there for the children that are of a learning age now, because they have a learning program at Sotterley now jointly with the Board of Education. Mm-hmm. But just in terms of people trying to identify and connect with their roots, I think there's a resource there for African Americans that should be exploited, because there's many negative images of African Americans in current media, and just almost a perception of lowered expectations that even though you have equal rights, somebody has to protect them for you, somebody has to do things for you. But just what I would like people to understand is that slaves weren't slaves and then suddenly became people when they were emancipated. That they were people the entire time, and they were dealing with an extremely harsh, almost intolerable situation. And they showed the diversity and the strength of themselves. And that's another thing I would like to see people learn, is that even though the slaves were in a system that held them powerless, they weren't just totally victims. They lived in a victimizing system, but they found ways to express their own individuality, their culture, to try to hang on to remnants of whatever African culture they had. It expresses itself in many different ways. And the big positive message I want people to see is that there are many families that began, even in St. Mary's County, as slaves, but in the 21st century, they have family members that are very vibrant and positive, and even though the struggle has been difficult, they're success stories. And I think those success stories need to be shared with as much or even more emphasis than the many negative news stories that you see. The news has evolved over the years to be kind of marketed based on sensationalism. So a spectacular crime or something, or something that's threatening, seems to gain more precedence. So I don't think we can rely on the news to present any kind of a positive image of ourselves. I think it's up to us, and it's up to us to pass it on to our children through just an examination of the struggle of black people within this community, from being slaves up through their struggles to support and raise their families in a way that they could also kind of take part in what they call the American dream and be successful. And there's many success stories out there, and I'd like to see more of them be made available to our children.
Thank you so much.